Welcome to the Fleet Success Show. We are a podcast dedicated to talking about the fundamentals, standards, and best practices that empower today's fleets to achieve fleet success. Let's get into the show.
All right, welcome back for another episode of the Fleet Success Show. I'm your host, Josh Turley, joined again today by Jeff Jenkins.
Hey, y'all.
And today we've got a special guest speaker, the one and only Sam Bradford.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, who'd that sound like?
So Sam is going to be speaking at Fleet Success Summit 2023, one of our repeat speakers from 2022. We loved him so much, we just wanted to bring it back again.
It's hard not to love Sam.
It is. Like, especially you meet him and you're just like, dude, this guy.
Guys, I'm right here.
He's a little bit like the guy off of, what is that? The Dude Abides.
Oh, man.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I totally
Big
blanked on the
Lebowski.
movie. Big Lebowski. Thank you. Right?
Yeah.
The dude. So we met, just a little history on Sam, intro you a little bit. You and I got introduced through Patrick Lencioni's group, the Table Group.
Yep.
We were looking for guest speakers for Summit, and, we reached out and they said, well, actually, we've got somebody in your area that we think you'd really like to meet. And they were not wrong. They did not disappoint. Sam, you work over at Dutch Bros right now.
Yep.
And, they said, well, he's an amazing speaker, he's very dynamic, like you'll really like this guy. So, you and I, I drove up to Dutch Bros, at headquarters over there in, is that Dutch Bros, Arizona, on that side of the valley?
Yep.
Because there's like two different Dutch Bros in Arizona.
Yep.
Right. So I go over to Tempe and he whips me up. He's like, hey, you want a coffee? Just like free coffee. And I'm like, well, I'll do a hot chocolate. Right?
Yeah.
Best hot chocolate I've ever had. And you've seen Dutch Bros popping up, right? I mean, they're just like, they have a fanatic following. Even at like midnight, you'll see a line going around the building. It's crazy. But we got to talking and we realized that, Sam, you and I, we had a very similar journey with regards to like our leadership conversion. I don't know what you want to call it. Like just the materials we've read, some of the experiences we've gone through. It was just really kind of cool. Is like we gelled a lot off of like, oh yeah, I remember this, and we read that same book, and you kind of just, and then we got introduced to the same people through the same events, and I remember specifically, talking about Ramsey and Entree Leadership.
Yep.
Talking about Alex Judd, who's one of the coaches, the former coaches at Entree Leadership, and he's now living out here in Arizona. We were talking about, meeting up through Lencioni and some of the, and Krista Kochla, who's the one that, we got introduced through.
Yep.
And just, reading The Advantage and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Ideal Team Player, just some absolute pillars of books. So it was a lot of fun as we were gelling and just, talking a little bit about what you had going on over at Dutch Bros.
Yep.
And so in that meeting, I don't know what you remember from that meeting, but share with our listeners a little bit about what you're doing at Dutch Bros and kind of how we got introduced, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm the director of people development at Dutch Bros, and what I get to do is just grow our leadership teams. We teach classes on goal setting, self-leadership, personal finance. And it's funny because you might think like, man, why are you talking about that at a coffee shop? It's like, this has nothing to do with coffee, but yet we just believe that our people are so valuable and that we need to grow them and we need to give them the tools that they need to be successful in life, whether they stay at Dutch or not. And so that has just been a passion and a driving force for me is how do we grow and develop our people? And that's led me down that journey of finding books, finding podcasts, anything that I could find that would just kind of fill me up. And on that journey, I got connected with the Ramsey's group, and then I got connected with Lencioni's group, and it's just been such a cool thing to see how all these connections just play out. And I remember when Krista called me, she's like, hey, we got these guys in Phoenix, they're Fleet, they're going to do this event. And I was just like, oh man, that's so cool. I'm so pumped. And I remember you coming in and I felt the same way. It felt almost a little like stepbrothers. Like did we just become best friends?
Correct. I think that just happened.
Yeah. It was that moment of just being like, man, here's another person who's just as passionate about leadership development, about just growing people, about just helping people succeed. And it was like, man, I was sold.
Right.
And when I heard your heart and your passion for what Summit was going to be, I was like, man, I'm so down. It was awesome.
It was really cool. Like,
Yeah.
just kindred spirits.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
well, and I think what was fascinating to me too was you talked about developing people, and like this is not something you do at a coffee shop, much less a coffee shop that you're employing, a bunch of 18 to 19-year-old kids, because like they really are still just kids, like
Yeah.
living life,
Yeah.
that are not looking for a career being a broista,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yes, we said broista; they're not baristas,
Yeah.
they're broistas at Dutch Bros. But that's like we're investing in people that are like we know they're not going to be here for the long haul.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, like that spoke to me too. Like
Yeah.
in Fleet world, we get that all the time. It's like, well, I'm not going to invest in them because then they're just going to leave.
Yes.
They're going to go find a better paying job.
Yes.
And like we talk about that all the time is, well, how do you do that? Invest in them, but make it so they don't want to leave.
Yep.
Right? Like they leave when they need to leave. You
Yep.
know, it's time for them to leave, and you can be happy for that. But until then, right? Like you're there, and you're creating an environment that they want to stay at.
Yes.
And so you guys have done a great job so far over at Dutch Bros, and a lot of that, you're doing just the fact that you're doing people development and you're teaching them how to be better people,
Yep.
not better broistas,
Yep.
not better employees, but better people, and the positive ramification that's having on you guys from a recruitment standpoint,
Yep.
retention standpoint, growth and development, as the company grows and expands, like it's been cool to watch you guys apply these lessons.
Yeah, it's so massive. And I think that's so interesting when people are like, what if we invest in them and they leave, right? The other thought is like, well, what if we don't invest in them and they stay?
Yeah.
Like, what if we just have mediocre employees that don't want to be here all the time?
For the rest of our lives.
Yeah. I mean, we could make this place so incredible. And it's really like, that's what it becomes. It becomes like a leadership factory. And it becomes this thing where people are drawn to those things. They're like, man, I want to go work for this coffee shop. And honestly, that's my story. I didn't start at Dutch Bros when I was 18. I was actually in all kinds of construction fields and did all kinds of manual labor. And I ended up becoming a youth pastor at like 25 because I had a huge heart for young people. But the way that I found Dutch Bros was through Entre Leadership Podcast. They interviewed Travis Boersma, and I was freaking out. I was like, this exists? Like, what is this? And I found the closest one to my house, and I drove down there, and I was like, hey, would you guys come talk to my leadership team about like how to build culture? And they were like, yeah. And it was the craziest thing. I mean, I literally had them come talk to my leadership team, and I remember walking out of that meeting. It was a lot like when we met. I walked out of there and I was like, I went home and told my wife, I was like, hey, I think I need to go work at Dutch Bros. Like, I'm going to leave this full-time job with all my benefits, with all this stuff, to go work part-time as a broista in a drive-through coffee shop at 30. And it was wild because it attracted me. This culture attracted me. And I was like, I want to be a part of this thing. And that's kind of like, that's what happens when you invest in your culture, is it attracts good people and it repels people that aren't interested. People that are like, this is dumb. It's like, great, go.
I have no interest in being a better person.
Yeah.
I have no interest in learning and being a better leader, right? Like, that's just let me make coffee.
Yeah,
right?
there's plenty of places you can go make coffee and you don't have to care.
And they're green and they put little things around your cup.
No. Oh, man. But yeah, it's we love all coffee here.
That's not created
That
equal.
was a political answer.
Let's say it's not created equal.
Hey man, I love just hitting different coffee shops and checking out what's out there. And I think Travis, like our founder, he always says like I love just that, like, and it goes with business, not having a scarcity mindset, not disparaging our competitors, but knowing that like, hey, they make us better. And like I appreciate it because I'm like, man, without those people, we wouldn't be here because they paved a lot of ways.
True.
And so just showing that respect to them, being like, hey, man, we appreciate what you do. I think that's just a good business practice.
Well, you can still say we appreciate what you do, but our coffee's better. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Something about our process, just the fact that you look at the lines, like the customer speaks, right?
It does, yes.
That's what's so cool too, is that we get that a lot. I get people asking us all the time, why are your guys' lines so long? Like, what are you guys putting in your coffee? And the reality is, our coffee's good, but it's not the reason that our lines are so long.
It's not special.
It's not.
It's just coffee grounds.
It's coffee, and it's like the syrup. Those things are there, but what makes the biggest impact is our people. We teach our people to care. We teach them to love our customers, and man, those genuine human connections are why people come back and why people feel so like just in love to like. They see Dutch, they're like, oh, let's go get a coffee and hang out.
Yeah. Well, and talk to me a little bit about that, because like I've heard stories of people going through drive-thrus and just it's that connection, right? Like if you've seen this, you've had experiences. So maybe like share with our listeners some of the experiences that you've seen. Like this is what the difference is, like the Dutch Bro difference. Yeah. It's not the coffee, it's this interaction. What are some of your favorite interactions you've had?
So I've got one that I actually did a TEDx talk on. Where I was just like, it's so funny because it's small talk. You have such a short amount of time in a drive-through to have these really short conversations. But I was taking a text order. This woman pulled up. I asked her how her day was going, and she just gave me that like it's okay. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I got to go to work. And I was like, what do you do for work? And she's like, I'm a loan officer at a bank. And I could just tell she hated it. Yeah. And I just asked this really fast question. I was like, hey, if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And she didn't even blink, Josh. She didn't even take a breath. She was like, I would be a marine biologist. And I was just shocked. I was like, like what you want to do. And I was like, what's holding you back? And she's like, well, school, I got to do. And at this point, I had just left my full-time job as a youth pastor, and I had literally started working on my associate's degree. So I'm just looking at her and I'm like, listen, your life is too important to go to do your job every day and hate what you do. You need to go to school. Like I'm doing this right now currently because like our lives are so short, and how are you going to miss out? Like, when is the last time you went through a drive-through restaurant and somebody like just engaged with you like that? I mean, that's like a funny one and a silly one. Like there's some heavy ones. Heavy ones. We had one just a while back at one of our stores where this gal came through. Luckily, it was really slow, and our person that was taking her order just took time and just sat with her and talked with her and just checked in with her and see how she was doing. And they had like a 15-minute conversation at the window, and that's not something that we would disparage. I mean, of course, if there's a long line, like we got to keep it moving, but this wasn't that time. And honestly, that young girl came back a few weeks later, found the girl that she was having the conversation with, and said, I was ready to just go take my own life at that point. Like my life was so miserable. I felt like nobody cared. And it sounds crazy, but she was like, the fact that you took time and you just listened and you talked, she's like, I want to live. And she was like, hey, can I put my application in? And we hired her, and she's a phenomenal employee. There's stories of there was a couple that was pregnant, and they would keep coming through and getting their coffee, and then there was a time when they didn't come in for like a few weeks, and the crew was worried about them, and all of a sudden they came and they asked for one of our employees by name. They were like, hey, is Caleb here? We just had our baby. We're in the NICU, and like this is our first stop when we got out. We want Caleb. We wanted to see if Caleb would hold the baby.
What?
Like was he? Yeah, it's like the connections that take place are just authentic and real. Yeah. It was funny. One time I saw on Instagram, we posted a thing for our job. We had a job posting, and somebody on Instagram said, they said I would like to work at Dutch Bros, but I couldn't pretend to care. And I was just like, oh, they think that we're pretending. Like, no, like this is truly authentic. Like this is who we are. We hire people that care, and we teach our people to care, and we give them space to care. We don't force them to say, hey, just hurry up and get these people out of here. We're like, make connections with people, make them feel seen and heard.
Yeah, right. And it's, like you're delivering that with your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that's what people are buying is the connection.
Yes.
Right. It's not the coffee, it's the connection.
Yes.
And so you're talking about this, like we'll do a little preview here.
Yeah.
you're going to be speaking at this next year's summit.
Yeah.
You're going to speak on a little bit different topic. I want to talk about your topic from this year a little bit, but your topic for this next year, give us like a quick, down and dirty. What are people looking forward to when they come and hear you speak this year?
Yes. First of all, if you're hearing this, you need to come to Summit. Like, I am not in the fleet industry, and I not only spoke, but I attended the whole thing. And I can remember my wife being like, "Babe, you're going to go to this thing?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, you don't work in fleet at all." I'm like, no, I want to be here. I want to be around these guys. And I took just pages of notes. It was so phenomenal. And so if you're in fleet, you need to show up. You need to be there. It was so good. Next year, I'm going to be speaking on my premise is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you've ever heard of it. I learned about it in psychology, and it was basically this idea of and I experienced this in my own childhood. If you go to school and and you're hungry, then you're never going to be able to focus on what you need to focus on.
Yep.
There's a thing that you've got to have your basic needs met first before you can go and learn. And then the next one up is safety. You need to feel safe to feel like you can learn and you can grow. And then there's connection, and it keeps going. And the very top is self-actualization. And so I took this thought of everybody wants this incredible culture, but they want to skip all the steps and just jump to hey, let's just buy this package and we're going to have this incredible culture.
Let's go buy a ping pong table and put it in the break room. Yep.
People are going to love it. It's going to be amazing. And they're going to just but there's steps. And so I want to just go down and break down what's the base level that we need to meet. And then what do we build on top of to get to this place where we have a culture where people want to show up and they want to do the things that we're doing and they want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. And so you talk about, you're kind of at that tip, right? Dealing with giving connection with your coffee.
Yeah.
And how that helps these are baristas, they're coming in, they're 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Look, I just need a paycheck.
Yes.
Right? But then at the same time, you're getting them all the way through that to this moment of you are having an impact and you have a purpose, right? And now that purpose is you could be making somebody's day and helping them, maybe they're suicidal and you're bringing them back from the brink.
Yeah.
Right. You have a moment to make an impact and a connection. And wow, what kind of just motivational purpose you need to go run through a wall and be heck yes, right? This is what I'm going to go do. And I'm fired up and I'm making a difference in the world.
Yep.
And that's the pinnacle right there. That's self-actualization.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
Yes.
And people yearn for that. But I love that you're taking a step back and saying, yeah, but before you go jumping off the cliff on self-actualization and trying to connect to a purpose, it's going to fall on deaf ears if you haven't taken care of the basics first.
Yes.
Right. And I totally love that you're thinking about that and that you're going to kind of outline for them, look, step one, baby steps.
Yeah.
Right?
Talk
about Ramsey and his total money makeover, the baby step process.
Yep.
Step one is emergency fund, right? Make sure that, you're not getting into more debt because of things that happen.
Yep.
And there's the same thing with building the culture. So it's kind of cool. You're laying that out there for them.
I'm really excited about it.
Well, this is the whole thing too. Is a lot of people aren't going to be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right.
They might have heard it in passing, or it's just not something that they were ever taught.
Yeah.
I did this probably a few months ago when we were at Fleet Pros and we were talking about employee retention, and a lot of them we hear it all the time. Oh, well, they just leave for the money.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, right? But and then I had to introduce this concept of the hygiene factors, right? And I don't remember who created this thing, but basically that money is a dissatisfier versus self-actualization is a satisfier, right?
Yeah.
There does get to a point where you can have too much money, it just doesn't have the same effect. It's like drinking too much water.
Yeah.
At some point, you're just not thirsty anymore.
Yep.
And so for people to kind of learn these concepts, especially in fleet, and you get this in the barista business, they're not familiar with this, right? They're making coffee.
Yeah.
Who knew they were going to learn about psych, when they come into your room. That was kind of the reception I got at the Fleet Pros thing. It was I've never, I didn't know about this, or I had never heard about this.
Yeah.
It's but in business, we hear about these things a lot. So the gap, and that's the quintessential, that's the macrocosm. I guess this story is the microcosm of the whole thing, the whole movement.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do with Fleet Success, which is, bridge the gap between what we're learning in business and what we're learning in leadership, and blend it with all the things that we know in Fleet. The lessons we get from the salt skippers of the world and things like that. So,
Well, most people don't focus on that personal basic.
Yeah.
Business, right? If you go into a job, you teach the basics of that job or those responsibilities.
Right.
But they don't have the basic, like, hey, okay, what about me as a person?
Right. You're a cog in a machine.
Exactly.
Right. And they don't think about, how do I make this cog more resilient?
Yeah. So when that cog falls off,
Yeah.
right, they don't understand why.
Yeah. It's an incredible movement, and like you said, Sam, like, you definitely want to be there, because these are the kinds of lessons we're going to learn. We've got Anita Grantham coming, which she's awesome if you've ever heard her speak. And like, she's a big HR culture. Like, we drink from the same cup for sure. Right. Jim Collins' nut. And if she's listening to this, like, she'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
Christine Rogers, Tim Ammett, we've got some like really amazing people that just have great leadership lessons. We're going to be talking about the pillars.
Yeah.
But you're going to come out of there you're going to raise the lid on your leadership development.
100%.
And that's you and I, like, we talk about John Maxwell, law of leadership, law of the lid's like one of the most important ones that we talk about all the time, which is that the organization cannot outgrow the leader.
Yep.
Just can't. And so the only way to raise the lid on the organization, up the leader,
Yep.
right? You got to up level the leader. So if you're a leader in a fleet organization, like, you need to be here and listen to these stories, because this is what's going to help you lead your people.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we could almost make a guarantee. If you attend, you listen, take notes, go back, apply the principles and lessons you learn,
Yeah.
you will not necessarily turn around, but you will make vast improvements, not only on your people, but yourself as well.
Yeah.
And like leaps and bounds, not little tiny, like, incremental improvements. Like, you're going to make significant strides, because a lot of people just haven't implemented even the basics of, like what you're going to talk about. And hopefully, if you've been listening for a while, right? I mean, we've covered a lot of this stuff, but I love hearing the different perspectives, because you guys bring so much flavor to it. I'm like, oh, that was so good. I'm going to write that down, right?
Yeah.
And I drink from a fire hose on this stuff, and there's still stuff that I'm like, oh, that's new. I haven't thought about it that way. Or, ooh, I'm going to start applying this in my own business.
Yeah.
And we're a software company, right?
Yep.
And so it's kind of fun to go through it that way. Now, last year you spoke at Summit.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you brought the house down. You were easily our best speaker at the event. Mike Pitcher was a very close second, but like, you guys were head and shoulders above the rest of the crew. And that was like, we had Kristen Hadid.
Yeah.
We had Brett Gilliland. Like, we had some really good speakers. I mean, Jeff spoke, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Right. And
Seriously. I don't know how you beat me.
so
I didn't drop enough F-bombs in my speech, apparently.
but I will tell you is like, there was not a dry eye in the place after you got done speaking, because like, you connected,
Yeah.
and like, we talk about Dutch Bros, but man, like, you carried that connection in that room.
Yeah.
And so I love for our listeners, if they weren't at Summit in 2022, share a little bit of that story, or I guess, some of the, the key takeaways that you give with, that you gave last year.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that helped people so much was just like initially just sharing my story and connecting with people on that level of like, look, this is kind of my background. This is where I come from. And
it was not a good place. Like, you didn't start with a silver spoon.
No.
Like, you definitely had some chips stacked against you.
Lots of trauma, lots of heartache, lots of like struggling through school and barely making it. And that's why Maslow, I connect with that so much as well, because it's just like, it's not a theory. It's like, it's real. I embody it. Like I can,
You lived it.
I can feel it. And I know that when my home life was so crazy, I couldn't focus on school, and it just was not a priority for me. And it makes sense going into business of like, if all these things are a mess and you want your people to care, like they don't have the ability to get to that level.
Yeah.
Right. They're thinking about everything else. But I shared about, I love just like the idea that people think, well, we can't have a good culture because we're in this business. And I think about like if there was ever an excuse that could be given, it would be we're in the fast food business. Like you can't have a good culture. We do fast food. And I always tell people, I'm like, if we got together in Jeff's car and we drove around and went to different fast food places and we asked them, hey, how hard is it to find good employees? They would tell us it's impossible.
Yep.
I'd say, hey, how do you guys find good young people? They'd say they don't exist. And I'd be like, you're right, because they all work at Dutch Bros. But I think it's mindset, and that's what's so tough, and that's what I was speaking on of like, hey, the idea of building this amazing leadership machine is that like the mindset is like we can't look at our people and think they're dumb, they're lazy, they only care about. We have to look at them and go, man, how do we instead of shirking our responsibility, like they're our employees now, so they're a part of us. Let's invest in them, pour in them, grow them, make them the best that they can be, and watch them flourish. Like it's incredible when I sit in our leadership meetings. We'll have our managers and our assistants in a leadership meeting, and I'm by far the oldest person in the room, and these young people are running this company, this massive company. And it's like, that's people go, young people, you can't trust them. You can't give them anything. And I'm like, I would love for you to come sit in one of our leadership meetings and watch these incredible people. But yeah, I think that was really like my focus was just helping the people in the fleet industry realize like, it's not about like trying to go find people, that it's about investing in the people that you already have. There's already stuff that's working in your company that you just need to grow and pour into, and see that blossom instead of having this, well, we could be better if we were in a different industry.
Yep. And you hit the nail on the head, which was mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And I loved because your story was such a demonstration of this is, if I could have just sat back and said, well, woe is me.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had all this crap and it just hit after hit after hit. And even when I got high, right, and I had a great moment in my life, not that getting high caused the great moment, but like a high moment in your life. I had to clarify that.
I liked it the first way.
I know. Even when you have that high moment,
yes,
that high water mark, boom, here's another hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how the mindset was what carried you through. And that honestly is like, this led me to this great place, and this led me to like doing my dream job.
Yes.
It was because I refused to let all the negativity change my mindset.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, he had this like growth versus scarcity mindset. And I remember the first time I heard this was Clayton Mask was talking about it on a podcast. He's the CEO of a company called Keep. They're a fairly large software company here in the Valley. And it was right as the pandemic was coming in. And he says, now look, you guys are, like everybody's running scared right now. And March was the longest month ever in the history of months, just because of how fast everything was changing.
Yep.
Right at the beginning of the shutdown. He says, but you as business owners, you have to decide, are you going to have a growth mindset or a scarcity mindset? A lot of people right now, they're running around scared, and they've got a scarcity mindset. And so when you have a scarcity mindset, it's, a zero-sum game. You've got to hoard as much as you can, and, like you're holding on to capital. He says it's not a bad place to be right now, right? Make sure that you've got enough to get through the winter, kind of a thing. He says, but the really successful people are going to be the ones that have a growth mindset, and they look for the opportunity. They say, okay, the world's shutting down right now. How am I going to take advantage of that?
Yep.
How do I use this and use it as leverage for my business, for my thing, and realize that there's opportunity now?
Yep.
Right. And when you take off the scarcity blinders of like hunker down, batten down the hatches, right? Like let's just survive.
Right.
You get out of that mindset into, well, where are the opportunities, right? You're the fox in winter and you're pulling out left and right, just different opportunities, and you're feeding, right? And you're eating.
Yep.
While everybody else is, is basically trying to hibernate through the roughest parts of the year. And I think we kind of all get into that mindset as I wonder, we feel this recession coming.
Yeah.
Are we in scarcity mode, or are we saying, hey, there's an opportunity?
Yep.
I remember when the Great Resignation hit, like everybody was panicking, right? Oh my gosh, the Great Resignation, we're losing people left and right. There's staffing shortage. You go to restaurant after restaurant. Please be patient with our servers because there's a staffing shortage, and right, like it was all scarcity mindset.
Yep.
But the people who had invested in their people, the people who had invested in culture, they looked at that, because I looked at that, right? I knew there's people like me, and they said, ooh, there's a lot of people on the market right now.
Yeah.
And guess what they're looking for, right? They're looking for
Great
that
place to work.
exactly great place to work, self-actualization. They're looking for purpose and
Yeah.
connection. There's an opportunity for us to go out and really get some talent
Yep.
that's looking for what we have to offer.
Yep.
So it's that scarcity growth mindset shift.
I love it.
And as long as you've got the right mindset, you're going to get through anything, and growth mindset, if you didn't pick up, like, that's the right mindset to be having.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just going to always be living out a state of fear, and we make bad decisions when we're afraid. It's just, like, our brains are physically structured, to make scarcity type decisions when we're afraid.
Yeah.
So, man, this is just awesome. Who knew we were going to be talking about so much about psychology today?
Yeah, Carol Dweck, she actually wrote Mindset, like the book, and she talks about growth or fixed. Like, fixed is just like thinking that what you have is all what you're always going to have, and you can't grow.
As good as it gets.
Oh man, that was a huge book for me. That really stood out. It's just
right there. There's a moment. I'm going to write that down. See, every time I listen to you, like,
Bro,
I get stuff, man.
So Carol Dweck led me after in that book. She talks about the lady that wrote the book Seabiscuit. She did like a whole thing on the story of Seabiscuit, and then I ended up reading that book, and that book was wild. Like, I laughed and cried. It was amazing. But yeah, it's a lot of that. It's not the adversity that's gonna, like, it's not gonna make or break you, but the adversity is what's gonna cause you to rise. And like, and that's what my story is, and that's what every successful story is that hardships happen. Like, Maxwell has a quote that says, with every opportunity, there's a difficulty, and with every difficulty, there's an opportunity. Did I say them both the same?
Yeah.
With every opportunity, there's a difficulty, and with every difficulty, there's an opportunity. I think I always say it. Yeah.
You're right.
They're there. Yeah. They're there in both things. And the problem is that most of the time with opportunity, I see it, and I get all excited, and I don't realize that there's going to be hardship in it.
Yeah.
And then with every difficulty, I see it, and I go, this is going to be the end of me. This is so terrible. And I don't realize there's an opportunity in here if I would just look for it and be open. And like, there's an opportunity to learn and grow. So I absolutely love those.
All right. That's on my list now. And for all the listeners, they're always, asking, well, hey, any good books for us to read? So Kathy Dweck, Mindset. Carol
Dweck, Mindset.
All
yeah.
Right.
So good.
All right. Well, any parting thoughts? That was awesome.
I am speechless for half of that. So it's hard. It's hard, right? Because I don't want to cut off what you guys are saying and interject, because I'm just like so captivated with the conversation that happens. So I didn't really have much to input. You got it all, Sam.
I don't know.
I do have a question though, and you don't give me multiple answers. Just give me one, because you always say multiples.
Okay.
If our audience wants one book, one dude, just pick one. What's it going to be?
Oh, that's not fair.
It is fair.
It's like asking like which kid's your favorite.
I could answer that.
I have an answer for both of them.
Oh man. Okay. All right.
Your kids aren't old enough yet.
Yeah. Well, I only have one, so she is my favorite.
Okay. Well, look at that.
He's
you
like,
have an answer for that.
He's like, I'm still waiting for my favorite to be born.
Yeah. Oh man.
Been there.
Okay, I'm going to give the book. Whenever my employees come in and they ask the same question, they're like, what book should I read? I'm like, let's talk about it, because I'm going to help you find a book that's going to fit you better.
Okay.
Because if I just give you what fit me, you might be like, this book is stupid. But I'm going to just for this, I'm just going to give you the book that made the biggest impact on me personally, was Self-Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager. And it was because I was having like a victim mindset. I was blaming my boss. I was blaming all these factors in my life of like why I couldn't be successful or why I was having such a hard time. And for whatever reason, Self-Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized like one of the chapters in there was called People Aren't Mind Readers. And I just realized like, man, I have all these feelings towards my boss, towards my work, towards my situation that I have not even begun to share with him. Mm-hmm. But I'm holding him accountable for all these things. Like, I'm mad at him for not fixing all these things, and I haven't even had the courage. And I can be gracious to myself because I realize my past affects that. And like my past, my the trauma, the hardship. It's scary to have those conversations, but it was just this moment where I realized, oh, I'm in control. Oh, I have power that I'm not taking advantage of. And instead of just living in that victim mentality, it caused me to rise up and to do something different about it. And that's why I'm sitting here today. It's because I started just asking, like, hey, what could I do in this situation? How could I make this better? So Self-Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager. I don't think it's the best book that's ever been written, but it impacted me.
That was the one that had the biggest impact.
It had the biggest impact on me.
Who wrote that? Was that Blanchard?
It was Blanchard, yeah.
Yeah, Ken Blanchard.
Yeah, Ken Blanchard.
He's a leadership guru. I love watching his videos. Like, he has some great videos online. He's right up there with like a Covey.
Yeah.
Or, in my mind, like a Lencioni or any of those. Like, he's a Drucker, right? Like, he is definitely one of the big names in leadership development. So
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Meeting you guys was incredible, by the way. Jeff, we didn't even get to talk about just like we're just saying how long it's only been like under a year that we've known each other, and yet it feels like
a long time.
Yeah, it's been under a year. I mean, how I met Sam is that we were actually at the summit, and I'm going back to where our eating area was, and Sam's walking in, and I thought it was like some homeless dude coming inside looking for food or something.
Which would not have been out of the question.
It would not have been in the head or anything. So it's like, dude, who's this guy? Like, long beard, right? Wearing Crocs, looking lost.
Probably like a flannel shirt or something like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so on that funny note, one time when I was taking orders at Dutch Bros, it was early in the morning, and I was out there taking orders, and the lady at in the car wouldn't roll her window down, and I was like trying to talk to her through the window, and she wouldn't. She just refused, and she just pulled forward, and I was like, oh man, I don't know what happened. And then she told the people up front, she said, hey, there's a homeless guy in your drive-thru that's asking for money. And they were like, oh no, that's our employee. He was trying to take your order. So it's not the first time I've been called homeless.
You just have this epic beard game. I think that's what throws people off. They're like, man, that beard, like that's
a homeless guy beard.
Yeah, that guy can't afford a razor or hot water or anything.
Yeah.
We'll get you cleaned up. Don't worry.
Oh man, I love it.
Well, Sam, thank you very much for coming out here, being with us, speaking a little bit to our listeners.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to March and hearing from you again.
Yes.
As always, like, it's always a pleasure just getting to spend some time with you. And every time we see each other, like, you just give me this huge old hug, right? And just connection, man. Like, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Like, your passion is contagious, honestly. Like, probably more than anything else.
You got a standing ovation at the summit because of that.
Yeah, it's just the delivery, right? Like, you relate to people, your emotion on stage. Dude, it's contagious. Like, I don't know what else to say. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm so excited for next year, and I'm looking forward to meeting your listeners and just seeing you guys out there. It's going to be phenomenal. You're not going to want to miss it, and I'm just so, like I already said, like, the speaker lineup is phenomenal. I got to hear Pitcher this year, and I love him. So excited. And then I've heard Anita, and I can't wait to hear her again. Like, it's going to be a phenomenal time.
She's saucy. Like, she gets super, like, she's fun.
I love it.
So, all right. Well, if you're looking for information on Fleet Success Summit, you can go to fleetsuccesssummit.com. And Jeff, I keep screwing up the dates. 21st, 22nd? 20th, 21st. It's online.
Dude, now you've got me confused because you asked.
I always screw it up.
If you wouldn't have asked, I could have just thrown it out there.
I usually go so confident, and everybody's like, oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about. FleetSuccessSummit.com. Go up, get signed up, register. It's going to be at Luxor, Las Vegas, at some point in March 30th.
21st, 22nd.
Boom, 21st.
There you
go. Go sign up. You will not regret being there for this event. You will regret missing it, though.
Yep.
Just because of the level and the caliber of speakers that we're bringing into this. Like, you will not walk out of there the same. You're going to walk out of there a changed person.
Yep.
And that's a guarantee. If you walk out of there and you don't feel like you changed, like, not only will I refund you, but I will have a moment of truth conversation with you because you closed your heart to that moment. And you should have gotten away with something. And so I'll still refund you your dang money, but I tell you what, I guarantee you're coming out of there with something.
I couldn't agree more.
I got to tell you this too. You guys allowed me to invite guests, and I invited 2 people to come, and both of them walked away going, that company was so intentional. Everybody that works for them was so sweet. Like, it was just so welcoming.
Yeah.
And they were blown away. They were like, I've been to different events and I've been to different things, but I've never felt so welcomed by people that didn't know me, and everybody wanted to make sure I was like, this is who they are. Like, and I just like, it's that connection. It's the same thing. It's so beautiful. And so I'm excited. I can't wait.
All right. Well, there you go. There's your marching orders, fleetsuccesssummit.com. As always, if you guys have any questions or any follow-up, if you want to ask, you can send them to podcast@rtafleet.com. We can get you in touch with Sam if you want to reach out to him separately. But until next time.
See ya.
See you guys later.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Fleet Success Show. If you like the show, we'd appreciate your 5-star review. Be sure to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and come hang out with us on social media at Fleet Success. See you next time.